to be briefed on.
Recording in progress.
The rest are internal issues. One is briefing on the SANDF morale. As per the DoD morale survey and general matters affecting morale in the force. And then the second briefing is on the impact of biennial military skills development program, known as MSDS. Intakes on the SANDF training schedules and the impact on rejuvenation. And the briefing should also refer to efforts in the reserve force. Reference should also refer to rejuvenation efforts in the reserve force. And then we deal with the outstanding minutes. I'm told there are 5 sets of minutes that we need to deal with tonight. So this is the situation as it stands. Nandipa, do we have the quorum?
Good evening, Chair. So far, we only have 5 members, Chair.
And we need 6.
Yes, Chair.
All right. Okay. Now, we will get members joining. Let's start the meeting, because in the beginning, we don't need to take any decision. The agenda was is part of our program. So we'll simply move and only stop when we have to take the decision if we will still not have the numbers required to take decisions. So let me welcome all of you, colleagues, and thank you that you have made time to attend. I have extended my word of welcome to the Deputy Minister of Defense, Honorable Tabang Makwetla, Samson Makwetla. I also welcome the team from the DoD. I don't know who's leading the colleagues, the officials from the DoD, but we'll get to know about that when we get to the items, but they are welcome. Let me welcome the acting SecDef in her absentia, and the team that is in the meeting to support her. I know that there will be the Chief Defense Reserves will be in the meeting as well, because they have an aspect to present on as part of the rejuvenation process. It's either him or someone representing the reserve force, but we'll get to know about who is in the meeting, who in that section is in the meeting when we take the presentation. Just welcoming all of you. We march without wasting time. Let me check if there are any apologies. Nadipa?
Evening again, Chair. I only have one apology from Mr. Tebeku.
Nkosi Tebeko.
Yes, thanks, Chair.
Thank you so much. So that's the apology we have from Nkosi Tebeko. I heard that the co-chair will not be in the meeting owing to a memorial service in honor of one of the COP member, a late member. So I don't know what time that will end. So I will work on the basis that he will join us a bit late. And then my apology is that I would ask to be excused at 7 p.m. Because I also have a meeting to attend. I hope by then
you're still struggling.
Honorable Tabo will be in the meeting to relieve me. All right, so colleagues, let's start the meeting. Let me.
Chairperson.
Yes, DM.
Honorable Chair, with your permission, from our side, may I convey the apology of the minister. She just received a call now to attend an urgent meeting of the ministers relevant to the ongoing public sector strike as orchestrated by NEHAU, and she has asked to be excused from the proceedings of this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, DM. So let's note that apology. Acting SANDF, you are now in the meeting.
Yes, good evening, Chair, good evening, members and Deputy Minister. I am definitely in the meeting with CHR and the IG, Major General Mazibuko. I have been talking to General Nyabo for the Defense Reserves, but I don't see her here. So I guess she's still struggling, Chair, but she's definitely going to join. Thank you very much.
Okay, no. Thank you very much for that, SANDF. Let me then, before I invite you, DM, to introduce the matters. Today we are looking at the status of morale within the force, and by extension, the reserve force as well. We are enjoined by the Constitution that says that the Joint Standing Committee on Defense shall be competent to investigate and make recommendations regarding the budget, functioning, organization, armaments, policy, morale, and the state of preparedness of the National Defense Force, and to perform such other functions relating to parliamentary supervision of the force as may be prescribed by the law. The Joint Standing Committee derives its mandate from this section. It's in the Constitution, is section 228, subsection 3D, but not the current Constitution. Not the current Constitution, but the interim Constitution. This clause was never repealed, and it got incorporated into the new Constitution, the 1996 Constitution. So each time when we look at the mandate of the committee, we refer both to this clause as it emanates from the 1993 Constitution and other clauses in the 1996 Constitution. Now, our document defines morale as follows: is a confident and positive state of mind of an individual and a persistent motivation, a willingness to engage in the shared purpose of the group, especially when faced with challenging conditions, such as military operations. That is taken from, this definition is taken from Van de Voort and Van Dijk work. So that's what we are meeting to do today. I must say that we have looked into matters budget. In fact, they dominate the agenda of this Joint Standing Committee as well as the Portfolio Committee. The functioning, we've looked at the organization. We're at the meeting to look at the force design as well as the force structure. Armaments, we've been looking into that with both the department as well as AMSCO. Policy we're always assist with. Now, our focus is turning on morale because all the issues I've just mentioned, they determine the morale of our soldiers. But we thought we shall just to zoom into the morale as if we are not aware of other things that may be impacting on the morale of the soldiers. Now, so that's in short the briefing to introduce the matters and why we thought this matter should come up. So today. Now, DM, I will hand over to you for the remarks, and then obviously you will ask the SANDF, acting SANDF, to launch into the presentation. Over to you, DM.
No, thank you very much, Honorable Chair and honorable members of the Joint Standing Committee on Defense again. Just to say, Chair, before the presentations are shared, the two presentations are in their nature an update of the state of affairs as far as the two matters are concerned: morale within our defense force, and of course the intake we conduct on a biennial basis to replenish the human resource of our establishment. Just in relation to the morale, to say to the members of the Joint Standing Committee, as you have said, Chair, it's a very critical enabler to the achievement of our mission as an establishment, to have employees, and especially the uniformed part of our establishment, that is in the positive and good state of mind as far as the execution of their duties are concerned. In this presentation, as honorable members would see, the state of morale is tracked across the board, across the three communities of our defense establishment. That is the permanent force of the defense force and the reserves, the reserve community of the defense force, and the civilian component of the department that is employed and contracted under the Public Service Commission, Public Service Act. It tracks those three communities within the defense, our establishment. And they are going to share with you the factors that are affecting the morale of these employees. And they will also indicate, of course, how we should go about making sure that we have employees that are in a happy space in the execution of their tasks. The presentation on the military skills development program, importantly, to the discussions we have had before about the MSD program, what is going to be important for us to share is the extent to which the curtailment of that program is impacting naturally on the reserves component of our defense force. Without much ado, Chair, let me hand back to you. The acting Secretary for Defense is in the meeting and with all the relevant officials to take you through these presentations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, DM, for your opening remarks. I now welcome the acting Secretary.
Thank you very much once more, Chair and members of the Joint Standing Committee. Greetings again to you, DM. I already indicated who is in the meeting, and I will request Major General Mazibuko, who is the new IGDOD, to give us a presentation. The DM has given a preamble to the presentation, so there is no need for me to do that again. Thank you very much.
Just before you do that, you are saying is the new Inspector General. There was Buhali before.
Yes,
General
yes.
Buhali. What has happened? There's been a change of guard.
He has retired, Chair.
Or is retired.
Yes.
And Mazibuko was the deputy. What was his position before? Rank?
He was a Brigadier General, Chair.
Within the same environment?
I wouldn't know, Chair. I only knew him now as IGDOD.
I see. Okay. Now he will introduce himself when he starts his presentation. Maybe it's his time. Let's hand over to him.
Thank you.
Honorable Chair, Nonkosi, and the honorable members of the Joint Standing Committee on Defense. I would like to also recognize the Honorable Deputy Minister of the Defense, as well as the acting SANDF. To all the honorable members, good evening. I am Major General Wilbrod Musa Mazibuko, who has been appointed with effect from the 1st of February of 2023, replacing Major General Buhali, who has retired. I took note of the environment's Honorable Chair. I've been the IG Army. And from the IG Army, it is one of the services that are falling under the IGDOD. So I was promoted into this post. Anyway, I can say it is the continuation of the duties that I've been doing in the army. However, on a bigger scale now, on a higher level. As I've already introduced myself, I want to believe that my introduction was clear and not ambiguous. If ever there are any issues, Honorable Chair Nonkosi, you can further engage me with certain questions. I will answer to that.
You have covered everything as for introduction. You may then go ahead, General.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. As the IGDOD, I've got various directorates under me that are actually working with me in various aspects. However, I've got one of the directorate which is going to present today the morale survey of the DOD for financial year 2021 and 2022. The morale survey, what I would say at this point in time is that it is being conducted on qualitatively as well as quantitatively. And after that, they come with results and they put them on the table and we go on scrutinizing them and check as to where they faltered. And after that, we'll be in a position to publicize all the outcome or the output. The expert who's actually dealing with that directorate is Colonel Tayedi, of which I'm introducing him to be the presenter of this evening. I'll be sitting next to him, and his team is also here with me. Any other questions or clarities that will be required will be in a position to engage the honorable members. I thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Colonel Tayedi.
Yes, sir. Tayedi, honorable member, sir.
Tayedi, okay.
Yes, sir.
No, thank you very much. Over to you, Colonel.
Thank you very much, honorable chairperson, and also the joint standing committee members. Like the General Mazibuko just mentioned, my name is Colonel Andrew Tayedi. I'm going to take you through the presentation, sir. I don't know who's going to load the presentation for us, chairperson, sir.
I thought you would prefer doing it on that side so that you control the slides. Unless you insist that we do it ourselves, is that what you prefer?
I prefer to load it for me, somebody to load it for me, honorable chairperson.
Oh, okay. So please, Tim, JSD. Okay. So this is the presentation. You'll indicate when you want him to move to the next slide, okay?
I'll do that, sir.
Thank you so much, John.
I'll start with the aim.
May you open the aim, please? Slide 2.
Let me check who's operating the slides. Nandipa, who's operating the slides?
It's me, Chair, and on my side it is showing.
Oh, on your side it's showing. What is showing now?
So now it's showing now, honorable member.
Okay. All right.
It's showing, chairperson. The aim of this presentation is to present the results of the Department of Defense Moral Survey of financial year 21-22 to the Joint Standing Committee on Defense. And the scope I'm going to follow.
Next slide, please.
Yes, the scope is as follows. The introduction, the mean score, the sample description, DOD mean score, DOD overall mean score, and thereafter it will be the findings. The introduction. Dysfunctional workplace risk is defined as the risk where the workplace may not function optimally due to the low morale, poor discipline, the negative impact of the system of internal control, workplace regulation. If a risk indicator such as continued low morale is present within the DoD, this may indicate that management risk might be prevalent. Therefore, employee morale is a key element in determining whether or not an organization is able to fulfill its mission, realize its vision, and change its value from theory to reality. The mean score. In order to describe the morale of the DoD, the following scale is applied to interpret the score. 3.5 or higher, it indicates the positive results. 2.6 or lower, it indicates the negative. Between 2.7 and 3.4, it indicates the neutral result. The sample population. The population for the study was defined as the regular force, reserve force, and the public service act components of the Department of Defense. And a simple stratified random sampling technique was used to select the participant. A total number of 8,732 questionnaires were distributed across the DoD personnel. 6,469 questionnaires were returned to the Defense Inspectorate Division. A total number of 422 questionnaires were spoiled or not completed accordingly. Therefore, 6,047 questionnaires were processed to determine the morale of the DoD personnel. The sample description, meaning that the people who took part in this particular survey, Brigadier General or Rear Admiral junior grade and higher, 12 of them, Colonel or Captain in the South African Navy, 78 of them, Chaplain, 8 of them, Major, Lieutenant Commander to Lieutenant Colonel or Commander is 549 of them, Candidate Officer, Midshipman to Captain or Lieutenant in the Navy is 461. Warrant Officer class 1 and 2, 543. The Staff Sergeant, Flight Sergeant or Chief Petty Officer, 657 of them. Sergeant or Petty Officer, 763. The Lance Corporal, Able Seaman to Corporal or Leading Seaman is 1,243. Private Airmen or Seamen, 965. Public Service Act personnel from level 4 to level 13, 746 of them, and the missing value there is 12, meaning that the questionnaire were completed, we have utilized it, but sometimes we'll find out they have completed and we can identify whether it's a corporal or sergeant or a captain. And like I said, 6,047 questionnaires were utilized to compile the report. Honorable Chairperson, the DoD factors mean score, meaning that we have evaluated this particular morale out of the 20 factors. And out of these 20 factors, only 5 factors are positive, 2 factors are negative, and the rest are neutral. I just want to highlight only 2 factors there, factor number 7 and factor number 9. More especially factor number 9. Both of them, they are new. And factor number 9 is being clear and also observed when we do the qualitative survey, whereby most of the Army people, those are wearing Army uniform, they are happy with the training which is now taking place, because before we did experience the backlog when coming to attending of the courses. But since now recently, more of them, they are doing the courses. That is why I believe that factor is positive. And like I said, it's also been clear when we do the qualitative survey. And the overall mean score of the DoD is neutral with 3.2. So the overall of the services and division is as follows. Only one service is positive, which is the Defense Secretariat is positive, and the rest are neutral. And I just want to take the members to factor serial number 10, whereby it's a defense foreign relation, and it stands there not return, meaning that according to this particular environment, since they share the same unit or the same environment with defense intelligence, they didn't take part in this particular survey, and or thinking that defense intelligence is taking part for them, but it's not like that. Each and every department or environment must take part in this particular survey. That is why you see there's a nil return there. And also serial number 12, MOD corporate communication is a project. This particular event is a project whereby it runs from a certain time to a certain time. Now, more especially in this particular environment, they were given a time to complete the questionnaire. Yes, we understand that they were busy. However, since I took over, I believe that each and every questionnaire I must be accountable for, whether it's completed or not completed. That is why now they it's saying QRE, questionnaire returned empty. Now the questionnaire, they were returned to our environment, but they were empty. Now we didn't capture that particular questionnaire. That is why they were returned empty. However, we did explain to the environment, to those two different environments, they understand. I'm just looking forward for now this current financial year to see whether they took part. But last time when I explained to them, they understand what is supposed to be done in that particular environment. And like I said, the overall mean score of the Department of Defense is 3.2 neutral. Now I'll go to the findings, Honorable Chair. The findings, just to summarize what I have already said. Like I said, the ratings of the Department of Defense is 3.2. The survey results that indicate the DoD Morale Index registered a neutral rating of 3.2 for the financial year 21-22. And those 5 positive factors I've just mentioned it. I've just mentioned them, whereby I said more especially factor number 9 is a new factor number 7 and number 9, they are new when coming to the positive rating. The next findings, which is at the page slide number 15, or my last slide, is also like the negative. I've got only 2 negative, which is the availability of logistic and the quality of equipment. The availability of equipment and the quality of equipment. Those are the 2 factors, those were rated negative. Only 2 factors, those were rated negative. The rest are neutral, and also those 5 positive factors. Thank you very much. That's all from me.
Thank you very much, Colonel Tidy. Colleagues, so this is the presentation on the morale of our force. It does touch on the Defense Secretariat as well. Mr. Murray, you want to say something?
No, if I can put questions on this or comments.
Okay, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you, Chair. My first observation or question is, you have given us all these figures and right at the end, the scores. Now my question is, so what? So what about this? What does that tell you? What does this tell us? Because clearly you have gone, I assume, and say, okay, this is the score. This is what we find at the end of the day. What does this tell us? What is this message? What was the target in terms of a defense force? Where should a defense force be? Is it acceptable that it is predominantly neutral? Or do you need a defense force which is generally positive? The way that I read this, and this is maybe just the way that I read it, and knowing that you need an incredible positive attitude in the Defence Force, and knowing a Defence Force where there's a different levels of authority, and especially in a army or a uniform environment, you know, there is supposed to be, I wouldn't say fear, but kind of a huge respect for people not to be negative about the environment. So if my assumption is, if there are so many neutrals that you know, it means like it's not cold, it's not hot, it's just in between. You know, it's like you know, they say you stand with your 1 foot on this side and the other one on the other side, and what is in between? It might be neutral, but it also might be negative because you're standing over a fire, and then the consequences can be a huge detriment. So my concern is, and that is what I need to know is, so why so many neutral and why so few positives? And even because there are certain environments where especially the negatives is very, very important. Those are the things that we have picked up about logistics, availability of equipment, the quality of equipment. That is what can make or break a defense force. And if I read those negatives with a lot of neutrals, then I say, we've got problems. We do not have a happy defense force. Because if there was a happy defense force, there should have been a lot more positives, so that at least your mean result at the end of the day. I just want to know, when you decided on your samples, those people that were selected, were some of them deployed on the borders in Mozambique and in the DRC, or were all in their bases where we're all at home? Because you need an overall picture with them included. If you don't know whether they have been, you know, deployed or not, then this is maybe something negative, because we need to know, because what we have picked up was specifically for people that were, or soldiers that were deployed, whether it was on our borders or in the DRC. They complained about things and they were clearly not happy. Things that we have, for instance, picked up is the fact that there is not a regular logistical transport for them to return to South Africa or to get personal posts and things like that, meant that I recall in the DRC where the soldiers stayed behind for their leave period because they had to pay out of own pocket to come with a commercial airline back to South Africa. Now, those things seems not to have been tested, and it seems like, you know, this is factors. It looks like an ordinary organization and a company, and I'm not quite sure whether this has been designed specifically for a defense force with soldiers being based in camps, civilians, as well as those that is physically being deployed on foreign soil. So with those kind of observations and questions, I would very much like to get a response back from the Colonel or from SANDF. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mare. Where Mr. Mare is going is I think it's exactly the same issue I wanted to raise. That our limitation tonight is that we don't have the questionnaire to understand what exactly the people were asked to respond to, because as Mare has pointed it out, only 2 issues appear to be on the downside. In fact, is one. It's mainly the availability of of equipment. But what we picked up when we visited different sites, different sites, is that people were complaining about the time, the period, or the length the period they stay in one rank. That there is a lot of stagnation, and that they are close to retirement now, and after so many years, they would live with nothing, close to nothing. And they were worried about that. I mean, they were also worried about the conditions in places where they were staying or living. There was an issue of not having sufficient training hours, and the pilots complaining that to keep their license or to honor the conditions of their license, they must maintain so many hours in the air, and that they are unable to do that due to maybe availability of equipment. Maybe that's a reason, I don't know. So they were quite varying issues that they raised with us, but they seem not to be coming up in the presentation, except those that are neutral. I think Marie is saying, what must we read from neutral? Is neutral the minimum we want to determine the level of morale, satisfaction in the defense force, or we want something slightly above a neutral that would give you comfort that your members are satisfactorily okay, and therefore their morale is at the right level. So we're not getting that. There's only one positive. The rest is neutral, with just two that are on the downside. So I don't know. You will have a bit more to say on this one. And maybe this should be the opportunity to bring in the reserve force. I know that in their presentation, they touch on some of these issues, so that when we answer, at least we have seen their side of the presentation as well. In the meantime, please digest those questions. Who in the force is going to take us through? The reserve force? Brigadier General Zolega Nyaba.
Yes, sir, it's me.
Are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thabo, I will exit the platform shortly after 7. Please be ready to take over. The co-chair is not available. That was my request at the beginning of the meeting.
All right, noted, Chair.
Thank you so much. So we'll take this presentation. After that, we deal with the MSDS issues. So, and then later deal with the minutes. There are 5 sets of minutes to deal with. Brigadier General, are you?
Yes, sir. So if it's possible, can the co-host also share for me, because I'm struggling with sharing with Zoom. Teams is better. Zoom, I'm trying, it does not seem to reflect. Can it be screened for me, sir, if it's possible?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
What is the presentation?
Thank you, sir. Okay, now I think I can do it. Thank you very much. Can I now continue?
Yes, you can continue.
Good evening, Chairperson, Honorable Deputy Minister, Minister Tabang Makwetla, Acting SANDF Dr. Kamete, CHR Admiral Kubu, other generals present, honorable members of the committee. I'm General Neabo. I'm going to present the rejuvenation of the reserves this evening. We can move the slide. That's the aim of my presentation, to present to the committee the need and the matters affecting the rejuvenation of the reserves in the department. Next slides. Those will be my scope point, the aim of my presentation, the role of the reserves in the department, the challenges regarding rejuvenation of the reserves in the department, the university reserve training program. Then I will conclude and close the presentation, and then it will be open for discussions. This is a familiar slide to the committee. It just speaks on the regulatory framework where the utilization of the reserves emanate from in the department, which is the Defense Review of 2015. And those are the roles of the reserves as stated there. They're meant to augment the regulars where there are no regular forces to either employ or deploy. They also form part of the standing and search military force capability for the department. They also provide expansion capability also when the numbers for regular force members are not sufficient for utilization or employment in the department. They also provide specialists and scarce skills, like the pool of specialists that we have in the Army, the doctors and nurses in SAMS, engineers and pilots in the Air Force. They also provide specialist capabilities for reconstruction and development, like the reserves that we've trained for different construction skills that we will use at works formation now that the functions of public works have been given back to the department. They enhance the relationship between the defense, the public, and the private sector and community, like the reserves that we had deployed in the VALS and the different skills that were provided by some SOEs like telecom, training our reserves in information technology that could assist also with the cyber command once established. Next slide. These are overall challenges facing the rejuvenation of the reserves in the department. One of them is that there is no longer feeder system for the reserves. The reserves have not had intake in the past more than 5 years. We have not had intake because we only have MSDS members that are recruited for regular force members. And now the services are recruiting according to their attrition rate. So there are no military skills development members that are not provided core service contract that can be recruited from the reserves. We also can no longer recruit young graduates like we used to, because we don't have item 10 budget that we will require to utilize to pay the reserve force wages. It has been reducing every financial year in the department. In fact, we have item 10 deficit. Even if we have operation funds, we can't reprioritize and move these funds for item 10 because that leads to irregular expenditure. The impact of it is that the average age of the reserves has risen in the past 2 years from 42 to 45. And if nothing changes, it will continue to grow and will end up with a very aging reserve force component that we cannot deploy in the borders or in other operations, because the only source of reserves will be the retiring senior members, and that we cannot deploy or utilize for operations. Also, there is a limited leader group development in the reserve force component. because now we can't recruit in universities like we used to with the University Reserve Training Program, as there are no funds for training because these members, they have no knowledge of the military. When we recruit them, we have to take them through basic military training and then officers because they are graduates. But most services don't have funds for this requirement, even though there is a need. For instance, the Army, they are the ones who've made their needs specific, that in order for them to rejuvenate their reserve force component, they will require to recruit 500 reserve force members. But that requires item 10, which at this stage, I'm not sure where it will come from, but they have that plan. I know the Air Force as well, they have a requirement of 50 to 100 members that they would like to recruit as reserves, because most of the services, all of them, their reserve force component is becoming an aging force. There's not been any ejection in the past 5 years. There is a strong need to revive the University Reserve Training Program. Like I've said, all services have reiterated that there is still a need, but we don't have item 10, the funds that we have to utilize to pay S&Ts and wages. That is item 10. There is a problem with this. And the areas that are impacted the most is the artillery in the Army, the Air Defense Artillery, armor, engineers, and support units like the Technical Service Corps, because once we recruit such people, we have to take them through the training with the vocational colleges. All that requires funds for training, S&T, and wages, which is the biggest problem for the department currently. Next slide. Those are the numbers of the University Reserve Training Program that the services, but they've recruited in the past 3 years. Last year, none of the services have any new members coming in. So the numbers are reflected there. From 2011 to 2016, Army had 197. So we ask, is there still a requirement in the service? And they say yes. 197 that they have recruited have attended training, because the item 10 situation was not as dire as it is now. But for 2016, they had to put some training on hold to allow proper placement and commissioning of some of the members, that they translated others to regulars and others to enlist properly into the reserve force component. And the numbers for the Air Force is 58. The need for European training, yes, there's still a requirement. They have 14 that attended passing out parade in December 2015. That is more than 6 years ago. 44 in process with commissioning and placement in the core services. These are the ones that have been recruited in the past. There has not been recruitment in any of the services. The Navy, they have 14. Is there a need for URTP training? The answer is yes, in all services, as you can see. They've had 3 intakes since 2011, with the last one in 2013. 1 member was taken to the regular force member. 12 of their members are still reserve force in their database, but it does not mean that they have utilized or even called them up in the years that they've been in their database. And then for South African Military Health Services, SAMS, they trained 45. There's still a requirement, yes. And the members, some of their members, especially the ones that are users, are trained by SA Army. Block division and works formation, they have had 9 each. Yes, there's still a requirement, especially now that Public Works has given back the functions of infrastructure management to the department. There will be a high requirement in works formation, especially to have some artisans as reserves. But through Kubatala, the department has been proactive in that we have trained some of our members in the functions that will be required in that environment, like plumbing, construction, water purification, etc. So we have a database of those reserve force members that have been trained in those skills that we will just provide to works formation. But another thing, again, works formation will have issues with item 10 and reserve force wages, because the 25% reduction has adversely impacted on everyone across the department, and that environment currently does not have a sufficient mandates. Just like Chief Joint Operation has said in the past, that with the vacancies that we continue to have in the borders, he would like to use reserve, but that the division, Chief Joint Ops Division, does not have sufficient mandates in which they can call up reserves and fill those vacancies with. The Legal Service Division, it has 1, because it's professional, their program, they recruit lawyers, some of the lawyers they've translated into regular force members, and they've included in the army, because all services have legal officers, but they are source of getting them then will be legal service division, because they're the ones who recruit legal officers, whether they are regular force members or reserve force members. CMIS division has not recruited any. Yes, there is a requirement, especially with now the formulation of Cyber Command, whether it resides with CMIS or DI, there will be a requirement to recruit some IT qualified members, even though the department has some IT qualified members, especially in the CMIS environment. The total for all the services and division for your team members is 314. Next slide. Now I've come to the conclusion of my presentation, which will be touching on most of the things that I've stated already in the previous slide. That to ensure that the reserve become a younger pool from which soldiers can be utilized, it is dependent on the following issues. Because mainly our reserve force members, the need is for us to deploy them or employ them. So for that, we require young reserve force members, not the aging force that the component has become. So we'll have to provide for sufficient man-days budget to provide for recruitment, like I've said. Item 10, our item 10 has been reduced over the years, and this financial year, there was even a 25% reduction that made the situation even worse than it was in the past, and it continues to impact. We can't recruit with our current financial situation. We need to institute a separate MSDS intake for the reserves. We've in the past requested for 2 streams of recruitment, where we will recruit our military skills development members for regulars and the reserves, but currently the department cannot afford this. We need to continue having pool of reserves that will be professional, like through the URTP, to ensure that we have a younger component of leader group in the reserve force component. This will in turn provide for applicable leader group, like I've said, that can be developed. And one of the ways to execute this is to use the university reserve training program that most services cannot afford at this stage, as it was illustrated in the previous slide, that most of them have not recruited since either 2013 or 2016. The combat support course as well, they also require young, trained, and professional reserve force members, because in other areas we have structural deficiencies where most environments rely on the use of reserves to complement their strength. Next slide. In closure, this is just to illustrate some of the operations that our reserve force members have been employed in. In fact, we have not had a single operation where reserve force members have not played their part of augmenting the regular force members. And this goes to show the need for the department to continue having a younger reserve force component that is both professional. That concludes my presentation, sir. Thank you. Now we can open for discussion.
Thank you very much. Let's then quickly take the brief on the MSDS, so that when we do the discussion, we combined the 2 presentations and also get responses to the earlier presentation. A presentation on the MSDS.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I'm Major General Strong-Eye. I would request that we screen the presentation.
Chairperson, before General Strong-Eye continues with the presentation, is Chief HR here at Rakubu. General Strong-Eye is Chief Director, HR Development, responsible for training and education in the Department of Defense. He is in my environment. He will be taking us through the presentation. Where we are going to be starting is just to give members of the Joint Standing Committee on Defense an illustration of how we do business when it comes to training in the DoD, both functional and professional training. And then after that, we will go into the implications of having the intakes every second year, where we will obviously be illustrating to yourselves and the committee what does that mean for the DoD. Chair, I want to confirm that this biannual intakes is part of the 5 interventions that we have presented to both the Portfolio Committee on Defense and the Joint Standing Committee of Defense. And it is obviously one of the 5, and then we just today only concentrating on this particular one. So I will now hand over to the General Guide to take us through. But before I do that, I also want to recognize Deputy Minister of Defense and Acting Secretary of Defense, and yourself, Chair, and the members of the committee on the Joint Standing Committee. General Sangai, you may proceed. Submit.
Thank you very much, Admiral Kubu, our Chief HR. General Sichongai, is now your turn.
I see General Sangai is muted. General Sangai, you are muted. If you can just unmute.
So thank you, Chair. I just want to recognize the presence of the Deputy Minister, the Secretary for Defense, Acting Secretary for Defense, the Chairperson of the Joint Standing Committee on Defense, and the members of Joint Standing Committee on Defense. Good evening. My presentation is going to be taking the same, follow the same way that it was presented by General Nyabo, because the impact are the same. And it's just more important for me that I would want to emphasize on is our training system and the way that the training system is being impacted upon by the 1 in 2 years training of the MSDS as a feeder system, how it affects our members and also how it affects our system of training. As we all know that the SANDF, I will not go to the first slide, background slide. Can we move the next slide? Background slide.
Nandipa, can you move the slide?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Nandipa?
Okay,
Nandipa, can you hear us?
Thank you very much.
Because it has been showing on my side.
Sorry.
Have it on your side?
Yes, Chair, it is showing.
Okay, thank you very much.
The
DOD, as we all know, that has already been said on several occasions that the DOD has seriously declined has seen its rates. The SANDF had.
Chairperson, is the contact only on my side so bad? I can hardly hear the presentation, the presenter.
Sorry, General Soshangane, your line is not stable. Can you try again?
It's not stable, sir.
Yes,
can you has seen a serious decline in its defense allocation. Can you hear that again?
Go ahead, General. We'll tell you if we still have the problem.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And the SANDF had alternative avenues to implement cost-saving alternatives. One of these cost-saving alternatives was the recruitment of military skill development intake every alternative second calendar year. And this decision was not made by the SANDF voluntarily. We can say that this decision was an imposed decision due to the budgetary constraint of the department. If it continues, it could result in a reduction of military capabilities being reduced and the defense force being unable to defend the country and execute its mandate. Next slide. This is the next slide now. So the SANDF requires the trained and educated members in order to mold them in educating and competent individuals with institutional and operational excellence across the spectrum of conflict to maintain its current capabilities and develop a future capabilities so that we can be able to train our members so that they can be able to develop and initiate and do their research. The SANDF training system allows for a capable professional SANDF able to fulfill its mandate. It consists of comprehensive training education system that sustain the SANDF with skilled personnel in different functional fields according to the unique requirements. It ensures training and education towards achieving the SANDF strategic mandate and a contribution to the national skills development, as we also contribute in terms of the youth development training. Next slide. The SANDF training system further provides for NUF alignment towards potential skills development, as we know that the SANDF was a skill development that was going to be capable to empower members to be able to have a portable skill that can be utilized outside when they pursue their second career. So these skills that have been provided in the SANDF in our training system, they are recognized nationally. So it is our intent to train and educate and professional soldiers to qualify to conduct successful military operations. Formal training is also provided in the SANDF in terms of education so that we can qualify our members using the institutions that are inside the SANDF and outside the SANDF. To train members with the specific skills that are unique to the SANDF. Next slide. Our training concept, as I said, in terms of focusing on an individual by qualifying and empowering the individual to the SANDF specific requirements. And when you focus on the force training, it is based the concept in the integrated force through successful levels of training of teams and groupings with the combat force. So what is important, we focus on the teams where we combine all the SANDF members after they've been trained as individuals in their functional training, and then after we focus on their training as a group and integrated training. And the combat readiness training is also to prepare the force against set doctrine and standards of the SANDF so that we can work as a force now to be able to focus on the mandate to work as a group, as we all know that the SANDF always work as a group. And also the force preparation, therefore, after the service, they've done this concept and then of force preparation, then the first employment then will be the responsible for the CJ Ops, where they focus on the mission readiness training, preparing the force for the specific mission. This is the concept that we are following. So simple, but this concept is being supported. Next slide. A DoD training system. The SANDF requires this one, as I've already said, to make sure that the development that complement the overall development of its officers across the full spectrum of conflict. The SANDF, therefore,
connectivity,
what I'm
Chairperson,
going to focus on.
the connectivity is of such a bad quality that I've got, if I don't read the presentations myself, I would know nothing that the presenter is giving to us. I think it's very bad.
Yeah, no, he's lying. I agree with you. His line is terrible.
It is.
Okay, please go ahead because we have no option, but to at least we can still follow because it's there on the screen. But continue.
Chairperson.
Yes, sir.
Because I can see that General Songhai connectivity is a problem, I can take you through to the end.
Your line is very clear, Jen. Admiral, take us through, please. Thank you very much, Sichongai. Okay, over to you, Admiral.
Thank you, Chairperson, members of the Joint Standing Committee. Sorry about that line of General Songhai. In terms of bullet number 2, we confirming that the SANDF has adopted learning path for officers and warrant officers and non-commissioned officers and defense civilians in the department. So all these people that are in the department, they follow a certain career path for progression to the next learning path are well-defined training routes that allows for the gradual accumulation of knowledge, skills, and attributes as soldiers of all ranks progress through their careers. The learning path focus on achieving defense competence enhanced by accredited training where possible. Emphasis here, Chair and members of is on accredited learning, as we all know that without accredited learning, even if you give certain qualification, you're not going to be able to use it outside. Next slide. In terms of the officers' learning pathway, we want to confirm that we want to become a military professional organization. So military professional development for officers is focused on the defense mandate, the development of warrior ethos, and the ability to execute military operations successfully. The officers' learning path therefore focuses on defense competence enhanced by education where applicable. The continuous training and education are essential to ensure the currency of knowledge and experience for effective progression to higher levels. The end state in all our training, both for officers and non-commissioned officers, is the ability to successfully conduct military operations. There are 3 points that we want to emphasize when it comes to officership in the Defense Force from induction to exit. We want to confirm that we want to recruit from schools in all the provinces of the Republic. And we also want to recruit graduates from different institutions that we want to induct in the organization. With the graduates, it actually cut the number of years that we could actually use to train people, especially when it comes to officers. For example, if you recruit an officer who's already got a qualification, you don't have to go through the military academy or to subject these people to go to other training institutions outside the military academy. So the people that come, you normally cut around 3 to 4 years, and with the medical doctors, we even cut 7 to 8 years of training if you recruit a qualified medical practitioner. And the NCOs from all ranks as well, we also do recruit them through the same process, and some of the NCOs, we also recruit them with certain qualification so that we speed up their induction in the military. The General Niabo just discussed the recruitment of the University Reserve training. I'm not going to spend time on it because she has emphasized on it. Next slide. This slide, Chair, members of the Joint Standing Committee, shows you how we do training in the military from induction of the members for all the services in the SANDF. When you look at the bottom where it says CO and lieutenant, we call it a foundation stage. This is where all our members start in terms of training, both NCOs and officers. Once they finish with their foundations training, this foundation training talks of also the basic military training when they're coming in, where we teach them about being military people and discipline and all the things that we need to make somebody a military person in the military. The moment they finish that program of foundation training, we go to the next level, which we call the tactical stage. This is where we train them now to be able to function in their respective domains of functional environments. I.e., if you are a combat officer, we will obviously start teaching you how to fight and get your breach certificate and be able to function on board ships. At the operational level, which is the third stage, we're teaching you to being able to become an operational level commander, where you can also become an OC of the unit. The requirements there in both from the technical stage and the operational stage. At the technical stage is at the service level, where we give you the junior staff and warfare course. That's done by the services, and it talks on the uniqueness of those particular services. So there is no integrated training program at the technical level. At the operational level, we talk about the people that are doing Joint Senior Command and Staff program. They train together and they put all the doctrines and discipline of all the services together, and they are able to conduct operation in a joint environment. The last phase that we have for the officers is a strategic stage, which is at a very high level. At our Defense College is responsible for this one, and we teach them on security and defense studies program. These are at the level of colonels and brigadier general, and these are the people that will be serving at strategic level, writing policy strategies on behalf of the department. The qualification that we give there is at the master's level. We have been using Wits University. Currently, we're using Stellenbosch University to provide the MPhil qualification for our officers that are at that level of training. We pride ourselves with the number of people that qualifies to train and get their master's qualification through Stellenbosch and others. Before, we used to get them through the university, Wits University. Next slide. In terms of the NCOs, we follow the same path also with the non-commissioned officers. Also, they're coming from the foundation to the strategic level, obviously, and then the courses that they're doing as non-commissioned officers is when they join in at the foundation stage will still be the basic military training, and from there they continue with their developmental courses as NCOs, both functional and military, with the highest course for the warrant officers being at the Warrant Officer Academy, which obviously provide qualifications to the warrant officers with a specific academic qualification at NPF level 5. We're pushing for NPF level 6 as we speak for the warrant officers, but we want the warrant officers, when they complete the program, they are also able to advise on policies and strategies in their own unique environments. Next slide. Chair, the purpose of presenting to you is now to talk on the essence and the implications of the intakes if we do it on the second year. The first part, we just wanted to provide you with a holistic training approach in the military, how we do it, and it shows the number of years that it takes to qualify an officer or a non-commissioned officer. But here, in terms of the intake, we want to confirm that with us going through this process of having an intake once in 2 years, we are going to, in future, and I want to confirm it's not in the short term, because I think we manage in the short term now, but in the medium and long term, if we continue, we will start having to experience a reduced personnel requirement to certify our training requirements in the organization. We will also produce less personnel who are competent to conduct successful military operations, because we'll have a gap every single year. And I think, Chair, we're also aware that we are forced to recruit according to attrition. So it means we will only take the number of people that in the system based on attrition rate. So you won't have a number of people coming in at the biggest number. So you'll always, every year, still have a gap in terms of the people that you're training annually. In terms of operational capabilities, we can confirm that this type of arrangement that we're having will obviously impact on rejuvenation of personnel going forward for both regular and reserve force if we continue in this approach for the medium to long term. The limited leader group development due to reduced leader system and a general lack of rejuvenation will also be experienced. The continuation training, we do training and we do training as we work for all our members, and also we do training as we deploy. We will start experiencing a restricted continuation training due to the number of the people that will be coming in the system. The reserve force will be required to augment force level to conduct internal and external operation, which means we will have heavy reliance on the reserve force in terms of the regulars. But with the presentation that we just saw from Director Reserves, we also accept that this will also be a problem going forward in terms of having a number of reserves that are coming that will actually augment the regulars. Because also the call-up of the reserves and induction on the reserves is also based on the budget. The personnel replacements in mainly the combat and combat support mastering as a result of a smaller number of competent members will also be impacted. We work on staffing and transfer of our people and also deployment of our people in the military internally and externally. So we foresee that continuing with this biannual intake, our instructors at the training units will also start having a problem, because you at some stage you will sit with no people that are coming in, and because of not being able to subject our members to training at a particular year, because you might have already trained others, and if you don't have a feeder in the system, then at some stage we might experience that a specific training unit does not have people that need to be trained, and it can be frustrating to our people, and the morale of our instructors can also be affected, because what they want to see as well is for them to continue training people, and that's what they love to do. And if they have to sit with no intakes in their units, then they will obviously feel that they're not being utilized properly, and it can impact on their morale. Next slide. We want to confirm, Chair, members of the Joint Standing Committee, to say a general decrease in students at the military academy and the sustainability of academic programs will be severely impacted due to inadequate student enrollment. And we started seeing it when I was discussing this with the military academy. Currently, in the first year, we had around 49 people, and normally we used to take around 100 people at the military academy for the first year. So the moment you start going to 49 and the second year and the third year, you'll see how many people will be graduating at the military academy at any given time. The challenge here is that we started, obviously, due to the less numbers of the people that we take based on attrition, you are forced to also, take a number of people for non-commissioned officers, because military academy only train officers, and you don't want a bigger number of officers without the NCOs, because officers are the bosses of the NCOs. So you cannot have a big number going to the military academy, but to have got a less number of NCOs coming in the system, which is basically the people that are the one that we normally deploy. The underutilization of military instructors during the year has a negative impact, as I've already said, in terms of morale and overall utilization of the instructors. I did touch, Chair, on the structures, because we start seeing that this will be impacting on the structures going forward at the training institution. So I'll skip that one that talks on the structure because I've already spoken about it. In terms of SAM's utilization of the reserve force personnel to conduct basic military training, and they're already struggling annually to retain some of the instructors as well. And SAMS has already raised this issue to ourselves. I can leave the two other bullets because I think I've already touched on them, because it touches on the feeder as well. And we can go to the next slide. In terms of the general impact, Chair, members of the Portfolio Committee, we want to confirm that the feeder in all institutions, although here we say in the military academy specifically, of what I just raised in terms of the reduced number of the officers going there, but the feeder to all the military institutions will be affected. The chance to address the backlog on other training areas will definitely be experienced going forward. When analyzing the average annual statistics of natural attrition in each service, it results to the average personnel loss of nearly 1,650 members, and a biannual intake could delay replacement of these members. And this is where we talk about erosion of skills, because if you lose around 1,600 people, and here we're not talking the people that we identify in terms of the MEM and the ESP, we're talking strictly the normal attrition in the organization. So you have a lot of people with skills that will be leaving, but the induction at the junior level won't actually be able to address this particular challenge. We want to confirm if this notion, as I've spoken earlier on, if pursued for a longer period of time, it will have some impact in the DoD and can impact on our primary mandate, which is to defend and protect the Republic. Next slide. I'm coming to the end, Chair. In conclusion, Chair, members of the Joint Standing Committee, we want to confirm that our primary focus is on professionalization of the military in the SANDF. And we also there to prepare our soldiers for modern battle space, which is a fluid and complex environment. The successful execution of operations and missions depend on excellence in training, education, and development. Therefore, it is critical for training and education to be conducted on a regular basis to achieve what we believe will determine or make our members to be professional and be able to operate at any given level. Chair, that's the conclusion from our side, and we can open to questions.
No, thank you very much, Admiral Kubu and Major General Sichongani for the presentation. Look, there were questions that were, or comments made on the first presentation. Would ask that they be responded to by Major General Mazibuko, the IG-DOD, of course, assisted by the other members of the team. Once we are done dealing with those questions, we'll then move to take new questions on the briefing on the MSDS as well as the Reserve Force rejuvenation efforts, and then take the responses at the end. But let me say before I exit the platform, thank you very much, Thabo, for coming in for me. But before I exit the platform, I want us to start now looking at re-examining or reassessing the personnel numbers in the department. We're being told that this is how many members you lose every year on natural causes, some resigning, some passing away, and some reaching the age of retirement, and two, some now availing themselves for to be exited in terms of the new program, the MEM. Now, so but the feeder from the bottom is too thin. We're not replenishing the numbers at the speed at which we are losing the members, and very soon this will catch up with the entity. Let alone that even if we were to replenish or recruiting at the rate at which we are losing, we're still going to be faced with the loss of skill in the process, skilled members. But this time, it's not only just the loss of skilled members. We are not in a position to replenish the numbers. We're losing them at a faster rate, as it were, compared to the rate at which we are recruiting them. So that's to me, it's a sore point that we need to now sit back and actually address. And we must look at, when we have looked at it, Admiral Gubu, we must then make a joint approach to National Treasury and then say, look, we've done everything that you were asked to do in terms of numbers and all that. But in the long run, you foresee danger. And we must all spell it out what that danger is. And then we must also say to them, look, we're not dealing with a head count. You know, it's not like any other department. In any other department, you just count heads. In the Defense Force, you are dealing with a different situation altogether, where members are deployed in packs. In other words, there can be no training if there is no ambulance on site. You do have members, they are already, everything else is available, but there's no ambulance, there's no medic. So it means that you must call off the training. So there are aircraft, aircraft that you must fly in pairs. So it means that for any mission, if you have packs or pairs and so on. And therefore, this thing of numbers, just head count, it doesn't work in the Defense Force. So when we sit back and re-examine the figures, we must then unpack all of that, and so that we are clear when we make a joint approach to National Treasury on this aspect. Honorable Thabo, thank you very much, Puti. May I take leave?
All right, thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you so much.
You are released. We'll proceed. We'll then request the first presenter to respond to those questions and proceed in the manner that we have outlined.
Thank you so much. I'm gone.
Thank you. Yeah, the first presenter, the platform is yours.
Honorable Chair, good evening. All protocol observed. My apologies, sir.
No, I was just saying evening to you too, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, Honorable Chair. And all protocol observed, as I clearly mentioned the protocol before. The only person that I'll just pass the acknowledgement is CHR, who has just arrived after I presented. I'll start with the first one. The first one that I'll remember, Honorable Murray said, we have presented the neutral as well as maybe the positivity or whatsoever moral status of the DOD. So what? So that's so what it reminds me when I was still a junior officer dealing with a problem-solving model. However, I would be in a position to come with certain answers. However, if ever I listen carefully, Honorable Murray also tried to come with certain clarities in terms of so what, because we said we're talking about the neutral morale, of which the Defense Force is supposed to have the positive morale. And we have alluded into in our presentation as to what is actually bringing that neutral morale. We have addressed the equipment acquisition, that it is still a challenge because the Defense Force need to be in a position to acquire the modern technology equipment that will address the issues of today. And with the limited resources that we have, it is quite challenging to procure or to get new equipment. That is going to close the gap, and that is going to be in a position to put the Defense Force at #1 status or #1 class. The maintenance of equipment, it also talked to the funds at the same time. Because if ever you take equipment under preservation, definitely sure there are some other issues that involves money, which will be in a position to make sure that when you preserve your equipment, you will also find it usable when you want to reuse it once again. If ever you did not apply those methods and processes, definitely sure that equipment will be redundant when you come to use it, and you will never be in a position to use it accordingly. Then we also indicated in our presentation that from the Army side, which is having the bulk of the forces of the Defense Force, there is an increase in terms of morale because of the courses that have been presented, starting from the junior levels up to the higher levels within the Army. And this one, it was as I was in the Army, as I've already indicated that I was previously IG Army. The reason I'll be in a position to explain it because I was there, I was part and parcel of the Army. There's an exercise which is called Exercise Hope, which was actually addressing the backlog of the courses from all the members of the Army, so that they would be in a position to be looked after in terms of progressing in their career, in terms of promotions, in terms of making them to be efficient in performing their duties on daily basis. Army had to increase the numbers. Those were actually those institutions that were presenting almost about 100 members, they increased up to 300. And they started squeezing on the other side, not doing some other tasks, so that they could be in a position to address the situation as well as the condition of morale in terms of progression in ranks, as well as to address the gaps as some of the people are actually exiting the system. Some of them are coming from the Army, and they are in a position to find qualified members who can be in a position to replace the members who are actually exiting the system. So that is where the morale has been increased. However, it is not only that sphere of maybe the Army. Those services that have identified the very same challenge, they are actually embarking on that one, on that train, so that they could be in a position to address the irregularities that are actually taking place. I'll go to the second one. The selected members to do the moral survey. Honorable Murray, the selected members or the selected units to conduct this moral survey, we both include home units that have not been involved in deployments, as well as the home units of those members that have been rotated and they are back from the operations, so that we could be in a position to get the full, the complete picture. Why are we actually not going to the operational areas? Those people there are on combat. They are deployed. It's quite difficult that they are moving with rifles and at the same time we are issuing them with the papers so that they could be in a position to feel. However, as you already indicated, that the deployed members, we have picked up some of the issues. I would embark now on the debriefing as well as giving the moral survey on the rotated units whilst they are still at the mob center, arriving back from the mission area. And I'll target them as such so that whilst they are still there demobbing, I'll be in a position to get the clear picture as to what is it that is actually affecting them. That is what I'm going to embark on. But thanks at the same time, because Kenneth Taedi is here next to me. He's going to take note of that and they'll be in a position to do it and I'll monitor it accordingly. Those members who are coming back from the operational areas with the commercialized aircraft, that one I will be in a position to take a close look on it, but I've never heard of the commercial flight bringing back all the people who are actually coming from the operational area. The exit point as well as the entry point of members who are actually deploying. If ever they are deploying in the DRC, it is the mob center, where at the same time we are conducting the mission readiness as IGDOD to ensure that the members that we are actually deploying, they are mission ready. Then after the United Nations come and conduct their own inspection and see whether our members meet the criteria to be deployed. This one of the commercialized flights, I'm not saying that I'm disputing it. I will also be in a position to investigate it. And if ever I come with something, I will not hide it. I'll share it accordingly. The other challenge, that is also Mr. Murray bringing down the morale of our forces. It's because we train as we fight. We use our doctrine. After using our doctrine, if ever we're training, the thing that needs to be looked into, which is actually demoralizing our soldiers and affect the morale. When we deploy the forces under the United Nations, we don't deploy our forces as we fight. We are deploying them outside the doctrine. If ever we deploy 50 people, United Nations will be telling you that they need 42 members. And there's a gap. We know why are we deploying 50. The support system of certain capabilities that we deploy, it needs to be there. And if ever we deploy them outside the doctrine, then we are forced and bound to double the effort of each and every individual. And he finds himself working on the other side and trying to close on the other side. And it is becoming very tiring. And at the same time, they can't be in a position to reach their required objectives as they are operating outside the doctrine of the defense. I think I've already addressed the issue of people or members staying in one rank, and some of them are close to retirement. I've already alluded to this one about Project Hope from the Army, which is actually escalating to various services and divisions to address this issue. that it does not continuously happen. The conditions of accommodation that has been alluded to by the Honorable Chair. There is something which has been started within the Defence Force, which is called commercialization. That commercialization, the money which is in each and every unit, it belongs to the members of the unit. There are processes and procedures that are actually conducted to commit those members to say, where do they want to utilize their money to improve their living conditions or to improve their lives whilst they are busy serving in that particular unit. It's either accommodation, but food as well as the messes. It is actually channeled there first to ensure that the food that they consume, it is according to standard, and the kitchens that they are actually being served, they are healthy and they are up to standard. Then it further escalates and goes to the accommodations and refurbishment of the accommodations. Before these monies are getting utilized, these members are being called. It is not decided by the officer commanding. Then the officer commanding will call all his members, and he will get authority or the approval to them as to whether they wish to have their accommodations being renovated or refurbished so that they can have very good habitable places. So they've got a role as well, those members, to say they want this to be done, and it is not overruled. If ever they vote for that, then we take their vote and we carry on, as well as the officer commandings do that, because when we start conducting our inspections as IGDOD, we make sure that we want those minutes to be visible. And even the rations that they are actually consuming, we want the minutes of the ration committee as to whether it was agreed that people wanted to eat this type of food so that they can be in a position to carry on. The dietitians are also inclusive to make sure that this is what should be given to the members so that they get the balanced diet. I'll go to the last one, which is training hours of the Air Force, of which I'm not the one who's supposed to be answering it. However, Admiral Kubu, if ever I'm deviating, you'll also give me the fire support. Yeah, we are not talking about the training hours as well as the flight hours, members losing them. Of course, they lose them, or maybe they are getting depleted because the equipment needs to be serviceable. That talks to funds. When the equipment or those flights are up in the air, you need to be in a position to have the jet fuels as well as money for those members who are actually on the air to pay them. And as an Army officer, not an Air Force officer, I remember when I used to have the exercises with the Air Force. By that time, they were still having the cheetahs. To keep the cheetah around 2000s or before, it used to cost 47,000 per hour, of which now we are not using the cheetahs, we are using the modern technology, of which I want to believe that it costs an arm and a leg to Chief of the South African Air Force to fly these machines on the air, and it requires money. And people will be in a position to fly lesser hours because of the resources. They are not there, or they are actually less. As long as they get the resources, they will be in a position to fly the required hours, as well as their machines will be in a position to be serviced. However, their machines, they've got also processes. You can put a very nice amount of money today. You would not expect that less than a year or more than just above the year, they will be having those machines fly because of the processes, bureaucratic processes that they should adhere to in order to bring those machines into flying. I thank you, Honorable Chair.
Thank you very much. I think you managed to respond to the first set of questions that were raised. I will just check with Honorable Marais because he was the one who raised those questions as to whether he's happy with the response or there's a follow-up. I see Honorable Marais, your hand is up, but we'll still take the next set of questions for the presentation on the reserve as well as the presentation on MSDS.
Can I respond, Chair?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much, IG, for your response. I want to invite you to request the minutes of our oversight visit to the DRC, and specifically the part that is dealing with, because there's no transport, logistical transport provided by the South African National Defence Force for those young men and women who are on leave. They must then on own cost either go to Kinshasa or to Rwanda to pay with their own money for a commercial airline to fly back to South Africa. And in cases like that, some young men stayed behind, their testosterone got high, they got involved with girls, and then they were labeled as SIA transgressors. So I invite you to look at that minutes of our oversight visit. I also want to refer you to the 2015 Defence Review, where it stated that the review states that a 1 in 3 rotation cycle in each deployment area is a problem with regards to morale compared to a 1 in 4 rotational cycle. And they say that that has got significant implications on morale, health, social, family stability for our soldiers. When we also visited the Special Forces School, they raised similar situations with us. We also know of our pilots, our Special Forces, who has been deployed to both the DRC and to Cabo Delgado, where they were supposed to be there only for 3 months and then be rotated. They stay on for 6 months or longer. And that has got a severe impact on the morale of those soldiers. That's why, as you will probably know, that at this stage, we don't have enough crew to fly the helicopters in the DRC. Why? Because they are not available. Why? Because they are not happy. So I want to invite you to look at information that was given to us directly, which contradict a lot of the findings in your questionnaires or from your questionnaires. And that, I must say, is a bit concerning because that means that we cannot take your findings and your assumptions in terms of what is on paper, because it contradicts what we have experienced. Then I also want to invite you to take consideration of the following. Our GDP is even lower now than in the past. You know, it's been a negative growth for the last quarter. If it's 2 quarters, then it's a technical recession. The GDP depends on how much money National Treasury has got to appropriate for the different departments and also for the SANDF. So if there are less money, don't expect more money. We also know already what is the medium-term budget allocations for the Department of Defense. And we also know that if you take in real terms, there are no increases. It's actually in real terms a decrease that we will get for the next, in this medium term, the outer cycle. So to come with solutions to say more money, more resources, we need to do this, this will deal with this. And it boils down to one thing, more money. We cannot use more money as the only solution to all the problems in the Defence Force. I would love to have more money for the Defence Force. In my opinion and my own calculations, we are probably 15 billion rand underfunded in the Defence Force. However, we know that is not available and it will not be available. I would love to see conclusions from your survey taking these realities into account. Because it means that your assumptions, as partly because you want more money and you see that as a resolution, it will not materialize. So we will get in 3 years, we will look back at this and we say, it has nothing has changed. In fact, it's gone from bad to worse. So are you guys prepared to take
in conclusion, Honorable Marais, it's a follow-up. You are raising new issues.
Okay, it is just on this, and I just wanted to basically invite the IG to consider using these realities that we have found and that we are confronted with, and in your solutions. Otherwise, you know, it's not a workable solution that we can take forward, and it will not solve the problems. Chairperson, must I first leave there, or must I address the others as well?
No, we'll come back. We'll come back
Okay.
for you to.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, okay. My good sir, you may respond to the follow-up. Even though you have indicated earlier your limitation in terms of how you conducted the survey, that you do not necessarily go to the mission area to distribute papers for survey, and how you have conducted it. But my understanding of the question from Honorable Marais is out of the experience that the previous committee, when they went to the DRC, and the engagement that they had with the troops that were deployed there. As a result, that is why it's challenging you. I'm not sure if you'll be in a position to address that.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Thank you once again, Honorable Marais. However, I'll start from here. To start with, going to the DRC, I think I've clearly indicated that forces of South Africa, they are not deployed in one place. They are scattered. They've got different bases, and of which, if ever we are to conduct the moral survey, we'll be actually getting into operational areas. We'll be in a position to be drawing the attention of members to come to us, more especially in those areas where they are actually deployed, which is actually the front line. We have seen recently the shooting down of the helicopter, and it tells you that that one is actually a battlefield. And we should be in a position to gather people, and they leave their posts, and it will be difficult. I think I had already addressed that. When people are actually rotating and coming back, the point where I'm going to intercept them, it is at the mob center, where all of them are still there. And I'll be in a position to include all these questions that Honorable Marais has been talking about in our survey. The survey questionnaire will be updated for those members who are actually coming from the deployments, so that we can be in a position to assess those areas accordingly. The other thing that I will agree, I would say, I'll go and find out the oversight visit minutes of Honorable Marais and the team in the DRC, as well as checking those Cabo Delgado Special Forces members and get as to what actually transpired, as it is my actually line of duty. I'll also go and read once again the 2015 Defense Review, as I was instructed to do so. the crews or the crew members of the helicopters in the DRC will be in a position to look into that. However, we should know that we've got the limited crews. Why do we have the limited crews? It's because we train, after training pilots, they are actually poached and they go to the civilian environment where they would be in a position to get better money, as the retention strategy is not there. And I don't want to talk about money again. As Honorable Murray said, it is a myth to think about money. Of course, some of the problems, they need money. I'm not going to shy away from that one. It is just like that. And I'm not saying all the problems of the Defense Force needs money to be addressed. Some of them, they need the commitment of the commanders. Some of them, they need the commitment of the entire leadership of the DOD so that we can be in a position to address them. So it was not in my statement that everything that we need, it needs money. But some other areas like addressing the logistical aspects that Honorable Murray is actually dwelling into, they need money. I'm not going to shy away from that one. You can't have logistics without money. You can't be in a position to have equipment without money. You can't be in a position to preserve equipment without money. Those areas, they need money. You train people, obviously, we're talking money. The retention strategy that Admiral Kubu has presented in his environment, in order to have the proper rejuvenation of this Defense Force, as long as we do not provide money, we will be in a position to train those MSDs and we throw them away. And tomorrow we'll be asked, why are we actually not retaining these members? How are we going to retain them if ever we don't have money? Lastly, sir, I would say, I'm kindly requesting that when we engage, I don't think that there's time where I came with assumptions. And that one, it's actually not true to me. I thank you.
No, thank you very much, sir. Yeah, I think in a meeting of this nature, sometimes the debate or questions the debate becomes heated, and the questions sometimes are out of experience, or for a lack of a better word, out of the eagerness to see the changes that we are envisaging within the environment that you are operating within. But you are in a better position because we are on the other side of the table. You are on the other side of the table where you understand the terrain much better than we do. Therefore, I'm simply saying that there's nothing personal. It is the nature of the interactions that we normally have with the leadership of the Defense Force. But with that said, thank you very much, my sir. Can we now engage the second and the third presentation, which was I'll just take hands that will deal with the two presentations, which was the presentation presented by Brigadier General Zolega Nyabo, as well as the MSDS presentation. I want to note hand, Honorable Murray, I've noted your hand. Any other hand, colleagues? Okay, Honorable Murray.
Thank you very much, Chair. Much appreciated. I think the Reserve Force people already know how much we appreciate the role of the Reserve Force. and how important they are in every single deployment and operation, where we cannot do without them. So the reserve force play a major and a very, very critical, important role. My first question is on that slide of the role of the reserve force in terms of the 2015 Defence Review. If we can be told, that is the role, that the ideal role, but what are their experiences of how the reserve force is actually being utilized? Is it in a very proactive way being utilized and integrated, in fact, into the one force concept, or are there still challenges with that regard, and that they are not utilized in terms of that ideal role for reserve forces? That's the first question. We've been given a very bleak picture of the future of the reserve force. It's aging, it's well over 40 years of age, and it seems like there's no or little feeder systems that can rejuvenate and replenish the reserve force. Now, again, given the GDP and the economy and the medium-term budget, obviously, and I don't want to repeat the previous question as well, but again, I get the impression we need more money. So obviously, we must have a total different thing. Money is important. And my personal view is when soldiers are deployed, don't talk budget. They must have everything. They must properly be resourced. There must be no problem, because otherwise we have not done our homework properly. You cannot send in soldiers into a hostile area without being properly resourced and issued and fitted. However, what other alternatives do you see how we can deal with the challenges of the reserve force? Because we have to deal with that somehow. Otherwise, we are keeping our blind and we will run into the stop block and we will not be aware of that. In your opinion, if the current scenario is happening into the future, for how long do you think and do you foresee that we will still have an active reserve force that can be deployed, given the aging of the reserve force, given the money that is not there, given the no feeder system? I recall a couple of years ago, we had a presentation from the South African Defence Force where they've actually shown us on a graph that if we don't do something by a certain time, we will run into a zero capability. How far down the line, on that line, are we with the reserve force? Chairperson, in terms of MSDS, I mean, yes, we agree that we should have a yearly MSDS intake, and not only about 2,000, we will probably need about 10,000 per year on a rotation if we want to rejuvenate the Defence Force. So I think we are all very much in favor of the MSDS, but how do we fund this and how do we do this in the realities? Just a question of mine with regards to recruitment. Does the Reserve Force, Admiral Kubu, offer bursaries to potential clever young people to invite them into the reserve, into the regular force, offer them the bursary to go to the military academy or to a university, and then commit them in terms of that bursary for, say, 3 or 4 years, the period of his or her studies? Do we have a system like that? Because that is what ordinary companies, private sector companies, are doing. I also want to ask you, when you have this, when you have determined the needs for all the training and education that must take place. How did you determine that? Have you look and see on experience, this is what we need? And because there are certain phases, and in some of them, you actually have to look into the future to say, this is what we will need in 4 or 5 years' time. So we have to train and educate them now and get them into, for instance, 5th generation technology now, so that we can utilize them in 4 or 5 years. So I just wanted to know how you are determining that. Because if we don't do that, then it means that, you know, we will often not have the ideal capabilities in the future. Chairperson, that is all from me at this stage.
All right. No, thank you very much, Honorable Marais. I've seen the hand of Honorable Mutsamai. You've got the number there, Honorable Mutsamai. Is that your first number?
No, I don't know when this thing came with this number, 63229. I ask myself, what's that? By the way, is Chair, I would like to ask, the reserve forces are people who are carrying the weapon of South African Defence Force. Is these people registered on the database? Are these people have benefits within the South African National Defence Force? If these people sick, can they go to a sick bay or to military hospital? I thank you, Chair.
No, thank you, Honorable Mutsamai, for a straightforward question. The two presenters, as and when they come to respond to those questions, I want to make an addition or maybe make an input. Admiral Kubu, today the president was responding to question, and something interested me that he said that the Minister of Police made a case, and it is something that I've been wondering about, if the Defence Force had an opportunity to make a case in terms of the skewness of the numbers in the Defence Force, the attrition rate that has been applied in terms of recruiting, the MSDS program is, insofar as that program is concerned, versus the population that we have in the country. And the president, when he was making an example with the police, he seemed to be very passionate about the fact that there's misproportion in terms of the numbers of the police forces, as well as the population, because we need to have a ratio of, an example, 1 police to 10 police, how many people. But in terms of the Defence Force, we equally need to have a ratio so that we've got adequate boots on the ground that will be able to carry the mandate as outlined in the Constitution. Now, to what an extent has the Defence Force made a case against that which the National Treasury is pushing down your throats in terms of the reduction of these numbers that are problematic. Of course, you made mention of the challenge of how this recruitment goes about and how they do not necessarily assist the challenges that the reserve forces are encountering. It's fair to say that we are well conversant with the budgetary constraints that the department is faced with, generally because the economy is not necessarily doing very well, and we are generally under budgetary constraints. But what are the mechanism that you have put readily in place to ensure that these gaps are closed under the very same circumstances that we find ourselves in? Because it can be correct that we identify problems that the reserve force seem to be aiding. We identify a gap in terms of the fact that MSD are now recruiting in terms of attrition, and we just don't do anything to address that situation, because tomorrow we'll wake up and we'll say we've got a dire situation, our reserve force has aged, we have not done anything, whilst we knew that these are the challenges that we are facing. What is it that between the reserve force and yourself, Admiral Kumu, in terms of these processes that you are running, how much are you supporting the reserve force out of these processes that you are running, taking into consideration, of course, the budgetary challenges that generally we are confronted with? I think I'll pause there and allow you to come in. Maybe we'll start with Brigadier General Niabo, and then Admiral Kubu and your team will follow.
Thank you, sir. The first question responds to Honorable Mr. Murray. The reserve force members utilized according to the rules as stipulated in the defense review? Yes, sir. The first one, for instance, to augment the regulars. The reserves have been doing this in all operations and environments where there are structural deficiencies. They've been forming part of the standing and such military capabilities for all our operation, with most emphasis with Operation Corona, where they constitute 40% of the force. They provide expansion capability. They have done this in Operation Prosper, and they continue to do it. Specialized skills and scarce skills, pool of specialists in the Army, and nurses and doctors in SAMS, they continue to do it. However, the extent to which they continue to do this is receding now with the reduction in mandates and the continuous deficit in item 10. Mr. Murray said we cannot continue to say we need no more money because there's no money. In my previous presentation, I did say that we understand the financial situation of the country and we don't foresee that we'll be given any more funds, as we also understand that the department is not a priority when it comes to allocation of funds by government. I think it's education, social development, and other developments. However, the intervention we're requesting is that at least we are assisted in dealing with the item 10 deficit, because the Department of Defense every financial year, we commence with HR budget on a minus of billions. I think this financial year it might be about 5 billion, but CHR Admiral Kubu will explain more on this. If we continue with this trajectory that every financial year we begin on a minus, then the mandates of the reserves will continue to be decreased and the age of the reserves will continue to increase. In the next 5 years, it will definitely be higher than 50. And that means even more aging force. The only injection to the reserve force component will be retired senior members. So there will be no rejuvenation and there will be no funds to recruit URTP members that we can train and professionalize the reserve force component and have young professional soldiers. So if nothing changes, the situation will just get worse to a point where we have a very limited reserve force component that cannot perform most of the roles as defined in the Defense Review of 2015. I think this is a question from Mr. Mutsamai. Yes, we have a database where we have all our reserve force members, both those who are called up and those maybe who have not been called up, all the enlisted reserve force members, the services, Air Force, Army, SAMs, they keep the database of all their reserve force members. And yes, when members are called up, they have access to medical services. I think that is all the questions. You can say if there is something that I have not responded to. Thank you.
I think the question was even beyond call-up, do they have access to military health services, maybe in the context of the benefits that are accorded to military? Do the reserve force also have those benefits in terms of medical services?
No, sir. Reserve force members are only
when they are
when they are called up. When they are not called up, they don't have access to any military benefits or services, actually, only when they are called up.
Okay, when they are not called up, they are on their own.
Chairperson, there was just one question of mine. I don't know if it's just a difficult question or maybe an unfair question to say if on this trajectory, for how long will we still have an active deployable reserve force if we don't do something very, very quickly?
No, it's noted. I'm not sure if Brigadier General Nyabo you'll be able to respond. And also my question was, given the situation as you have painted the picture, what strategies can you devise under the circumstances of the financial constraint that we find ourselves to at least not say in the next 5 years, 10 years, we'll have an aged reserve force without any rejuvenation? How best can we devise means to redress some of those challenges?
Can I now respond, sir?
Yes, no.
Okay. First, Honorable Mr. Murray, if nothing changes in the next 5 years, considering that the age will increase to a point where members are not deployable and the only injection will come from retired senior members, if nothing changes in the next 5 years, only 50% of what the reserve can do now will be able to do in the future. With those roles as stated in the Defense Review, the effort will only be 50%. For instance, I don't think we can continue maintaining the 40% representativity levels in the corona if nothing changes in the next 5 years. Strategies, Mr. Moshe, that can be introduced to mitigate. Maybe to call less senior members, call up less senior members so that we can call the younger members that we still have for deployment purposes. and also the interventions when it comes to item 10 deficit. If that continues, if the Defence Force commences every financial year with 5-6 billion item 10 deficit, then the only option is to try and manage cost of employment. And when those interventions are introduced, then definitely one of the options is to reduce the man days. Thank you, sir.
Okay, Admiral Kubu.
Chair.
Oh, sorry, Chair.
Oh, just a second, Admiral Kubu, Honorable Mutsamai, and I see the Honorable Ryder's hand is also up.
Yeah, Chairperson, you see this issue of military reserve forces, when they go to, for an extent, they are being taken to go and assist in Mozambique, and they are on a database. When they come back, they are no longer on a, they cannot even go to the hospital because they are not being called. Why can't we take these people permanently and make them soldiers? Because they are carrying guns. They are carrying our weapons. If something is happening within Gauteng, they are using the reserve forces. And these reserve forces, if they get injured, who is going to pay for them? Who's going to assist them? I mean, we mustn't take these people like we are going to Mashonisa. You are going to have money for the level of 2 months after that. When you come back from Mashonisa, you are no longer a soldier. They are wearing South African National Defence Force uniform. And when you saw them carrying a gun, you see, these are the soldiers. But why they have a benefit when they are going to do a work? When they are finished with that, when they are finished being used on that work, they are no longer benefiting from the South African National Defence Force. Why we don't have enough soldiers? Let's put a lot of soldiers so that they can be permanent, not part-time job. I think we should.
Noted, Honorable Mutsamai. Honorable Ryder.
Yeah, good evening, Chairperson, and I apologize. I've been in and out of the meeting tonight. Unfortunately, the technicians have been working on the Vodacom tower here in Acacia Park, and so we haven't had consistent signal throughout, and it's my only access in. Chair, but I've been listening carefully, and at the beginning, unfortunately, I think you joined a little bit late, but the Chair Zaba that started the meeting reminded us of our mandate as a committee, and reminded us that it includes budget functioning, mission readiness, morale, etc. of the Defence Force. And if I listen to the bits of the presentation that I've heard, and certainly now to the answers to the questions, Chair, it indicates to me that the budget of the Defence Force is not working as we as committee members expect it to. So the budget functioning is not having the budget is not functioning in order to have the desired outcome. And we've had this discussion before in various different places. So, Chairperson, we're in a budget cycle now, and I do think that we need to be very careful how we approach the funding of the Defence Force and its various different structures in our discussions as we go ahead in the budget process over the next couple of months. I mean, it's 2 months, then a month and a bit until the budget is finally signed off. And as we consider exactly what's going on here, and we need to decide, is the Defence Force taking the money that is appropriated to it and using it on things that we as a committee think it shouldn't be using it on? And remember, budget functioning is our function. So are they using the budget that we give them adequately? If we think that they are using the budget in the best way that they can, and yet we still feel that they are short of money, then there's a problem with the amount of money that is appropriated to them, Chair. And so therefore my comment is not aimed at the presenters. My comment is aimed at the members of this committee, Chair, to say that when a division is called on the budget vote, when we finally come to vote the appropriation bill through, just remember that your vote will be noted for the budget of the Defence Force. And then we can have our committee meetings again, perhaps keeping in mind from who voted in favor of the budget and who voted against it.
All right. No, thank you very much, Honorable Ryder. That task and responsibility, I will take it with diligence. I will look at who votes for the budget and who does not. And I know the culprits. Admiral Kubu.
Thank you, Chairperson, Honorable Mutne, and members of the Joint Standing Committee of Defence. Thanks for the questions and comments that has been made by yourselves as members of the committee. I just want to go to maybe talk quickly on the reserves. I know Jiran Zoleka Nyabo has attended to quite a number of questions, which I'm not going to repeat. But Ramare did ask one question to say, what is the future of the reserves? My understanding is that he wanted to know whether there is future. Are we going to continue with the reserves? I want to confirm that the reserve will always have a future in our military space. We have got no intention not to continue with the reserves, either by means of addressing the feeder system or even increasing the mandates of the reserves going forward because of the role that they play. We also are mindful that we have been talking about the one force concept in terms of the regulars and the reserves, and it is through that one force concept that will be better defense force. We cannot afford to allow the reserve force to diminish in the organization. The only reason the mandates have been reduced is solely because of the budget. And as we indicated before, if we work according to what has been allocated to us, you're going to have to do away with certain things or cut somewhere else. And this is where we find ourselves. But it does not necessarily mean there is no requirement for the reserves. I can confirm that they're playing a very, very critical role in the military, especially the younger ones that are coming, who are still energetic and they can still be able to be deployed. Those are the reserves that we want. With the extended deployments that we are having in a country and in a region, we definitely need younger reserve force that we are going to train from the beginning, either through the MSDS or directly into the reserve if we don't use the MSDS, so that they are deployable. But however, we also need to emphasize that we also need the reserves that has already been in the system with the knowledge that they're having and experience that they're having to utilize them in other functions in the reserve, whether it's in terms of policies, strategies, or even becoming our think tank in the military, because we can't write away the experience that our members had. An average of a member who joined straight at the age of 18 and leaving the Defence Force at the age of 60 is just over 40 years. So we're talking over 40 years of experience that we can't run away. And even there, we need them. The only challenge is when you call them up, where are you calling them up? Are they now being called up to replace the regulars? And the answer is definitely not. We should not be calling up the reserve to replace the regulars. We call them up to augment the regulars. So I wanted just to say that in terms of the future of the reserve, that definitely there is future for the Defence Force going forward in the organization. The other question that Honorable Mare raised was on the recruitment from my side specifically, and whether we have considered bursaries to get the younger kids in the system and afford them bursaries. I can confirm that we use the military's skills development program to train the young people that are coming in the system. The first 2 years is where we see or we want to establish as to whether they've got what it takes to be military people and then also to be having the love of the military. So the 2 years is what we use as induction phase to also see to it that we're going to retain the people that we want after 2 years. But once they have proven to us that they're interested and they've got love for the military and they will stay, we actually take them to all the other training environments in the military, i.e., most of the MSDSs who are officers will go to the military academy on completion of the 2 years, and they will be provided with academic qualification, biennial degrees in military sciences at the military academy, and they also have got an opportunity to continue even after the biennial degree. The only thing is after 2 years, you have to give them a contract of another period, which is normally around 5 years or even longer than that, so that you can actually maximize in terms of the money that you have spent on them. So you're not going to allow them to leave for the reserve force yet. But if budget was permitting, there is nothing wrong that you could still allow them to complete academic education at the military academy or any other institution which we work with and exit them in the reserves if they are interested to go into other sectors in our society. And we have done it before, but I think with the budget constraint, you want to keep what you have, trained and educated, because you don't have luxury in terms of the money. The option that we have now to avoid this, what I just said now, to train people and allow them to go, if we want to provide bursaries to our members, we started using SASITA, which works with us, and they always willing to provide certain money to us in terms of training and even the bursaries that we can provide to our people. But these people are not going to come in as a military skills development program, or they're not coming in we take them and we train them, and then after that we allow them to go back to the society. But the fortunate part is most of them, if they complete their qualification, you can still recruit them permanently in the military. So we've got a diverse system that we use to train them and even to keep them. But the numbers, unfortunately, is based on what SASITA could provide to us every year. We've been averaging between 60 to 70, where we get the funding from SASITA yearly to train, and we already have a service level agreement. So the issue of the bursary can actually be mitigated, and we can be able to provide the bursaries to our people to complete and even recruit from their pool when they finish. In terms of training education, what are we training for, and what are we going to need it for the future? Do we do an appreciation on that? Indeed, Honorable Mare, we really do that. If you look at the system that we presented this evening, which shows the career pathing of the officers and the NCOs, in between, you've got the military training, functional training, but you also have the academic output through Stellenbosch University, as I indicated also before we went to Stellenbosch University. So we've got a soldier or sailor or airman that will come with functional and military training, but also come with academic qualification. Are we really needing those qualifications? Indeed, we are. And that's why when we train, the career pathing talks on overall the officer or non-commissioned officer that we want for the future to be able to perform at the very highest level in the future. So our training is always structured in such a way that it will address the future. And you saw also on my slide, it will show you the number of years that it takes to train our soldiers to get the. We can confirm or not also shy away from it. Sometimes we might make an error of judgment in certain individuals that we identified, we thinking that they will be trained through this career pathing and we lose them on the way. That we can accept that it does happen. But over 70% of the time, the same career chart that we're signing with our members takes them through their mastering in academia, and they actually end up being where we are. But yes, retention of those people becomes a problem, because the more you educate them, the more they get trained, the more they become marketable, and you have got a problem to retain them. I can confirm most of those people that have been trained the way we want them, they get recruited outside very, very quickly. And we have seen it with the engineers, with the technical officers, with the combat officers, with the pilots. That's what the battle that we've been fighting for years, because of the quality of training that we've been giving. Yes, now with the systems and aging of our equipments and capabilities, yes, we know that we are constrained a bit in terms of training for people to the level that we want, because we don't have the capabilities due to budget to train our people to the level that we want them to be trained. So in terms of whether we train and we can project what we want for the future, we can safely say yes, we believe that the current process will assist us to projecting what we require from all our men and women that has joined the military in terms of the future. Honorable Mutla, you did say us about this, the issues in terms of the skewness of where we are in terms of the population and the ratio. We're fully aware that in terms of the number of the people that we get in now in the system, the number is not sufficient enough to be able to say we can recruit in terms of the correct numbers, but equally not the correct numbers. We recruit and train the right people. And we're always going to keep on mentioning the budget, and it's solely because of the budget. When we started with the MSDS intake, Honorable Mutla, you probably are aware that we always targeted 10,000 people. And then I know it was many years ago when we started with the concept of the MSDSs. Ask me if we ever even came closer to the 10,000. We never, because of the challenges in terms of the budget also, but not only the budget, also it was always becoming a problem. The more the numbers you wanted to train and you don't keep them on after 2 years, it used to be a problem where we felt that we're training people that we can't keep, and we train them to operate weapons, etc., and we allow them to go on the street, and what is the security implications for them. And we made a decision to say maybe it's not the right idea to train so many people and put them on the street. Those members initially, when we talked about the 10, was actually to augment the reserves and use them in the reserve. But with the unemployment rate that we're sitting with in the country now, at the time, the industry, the other sectors could not absorb all of them that we don't keep. And we kept on having a problem to say, are we saying the country is safe for these people? They can be taken by any other person because they've been trained and being even used against the country in all forms that we know we don't want. So it's always been a problem to train so many and exit them. But the skewness, we can confirm there is, because we believe that in terms of the operational tempos that we're having in the SANDF, we needed to train more people so that we got more boots on the ground, but we're not able to do that now because of the challenge that we have already spelled to yourselves. And I think General Nyabo did attend to the issues that you have raised, but on the issue of the database itself, we do keep the database. The figures that General would raised is part of the database that we keep. You'll see that the numbers have been going down and down because some people after 65 years, they age and they also get taken out if we don't extend after 65 in terms of our Defense Act. Members have until 65, but we extend until 75. But after 65, most of the members are aging and they're no longer interested to continue. But those that are interested to continue, we also don't call them quite often because we don't have the requirement to call at that age group and rank level. So we started losing them. So the numbers of the reserve is dwindling as we speak, but the database is definitely there. I can also link it to the last one, Honorable Samai, that you raised and say, after deployment, why we let them go? And I think it talked to exactly what I just raised now, to say, we let them go because we cannot accommodate them in a regular force because of, the constraint that we are having in terms of the budget and the availability of the post. We would have loved to keep all of them if the structures were allowing us to do that, but unfortunately the structures and the budget does not allow us. That's why for now we keep on saying we recruit according to attrition. So it means the numbers that we take in now, the last few years, I think since the last 4 or 5 years, we've been recruiting people according to attrition, which means we absorb all of them. We don't allow them to go unless those that volunteer after 2 years and say they don't want to stay, they are the people that leave. So we don't allow anybody now to exit because we take according to the numbers that we want and they get translated in the reserve. But it does not help the reserve force. The unfortunate part is that there is no feeder, as what General Nyabo said, because you absorb everybody in the regular force. The option that we are having is to go and not put them through the military skills development program, probably, but maybe use, people like Sasita, get them as part of the interns, train them. They get a stipend with no commitment that they're going to stay. But the problem is that it's still going to be the same because you still have to train them to use guns and it's still going to go to the same. So we are in a difficult situation to say, how do you get these people in the system and train them and keep them? But if there was a lot of or employment was better in our country, I don't think we would even be discussing the security implication of training them and allowing them to go, because they would be absorbed by certain sectors or all the defense industry, and we could always call them up as we want to utilize them in the military. The problem also is that our constitution now is also not making it easier for us to call up the reserves who are active where they are. We can only call them up or people volunteer to be called up when they are on vacation, because we, as members, would probably go back and see with the period of national service, employers were compelled to release the members when they are called up by the Defense Force. We're not there. I don't think we will be there now in terms of, our constitution now. I don't think we can compel anybody to be called up, but I don't think we can even force the employers to allow the people to come, because they're going to already start saving them with a notice to say, if you're going to go to the military for 6 months and you're not here, we take note that we're not going to take you back. So it's all how we function in the society, in our country, that makes it difficult to even call up a reserve force who's active, and we is the reserve force that we want. But we're hoping that as we go along and we're debating with everybody in future on these issues, we might probably be in a position to convince the employers out there to say, also allow the people to also serve in the military as we want them. I don't know if I missed anything. I believe, Honorable Chair, I might have touched. I know I was brief, but I think I've attended to all the questions. Honorable Raider, I've taken note of your inputs. And then, yes, you did indicate that it's for the committee. So I'm not going to talk on that issue. But if there is anything that we might have missed for now, we can be reminded of that, and then we can attend to it. Thanks, Honorable Chair.
Thank you very much, CHR. I see there's a hand from Honorable Galaxy 830S. Who's a Galaxy 830?
Honorable Chair is General Gondo.
Oh, General, you are challenged by technology. You did not rename your gadgets. But you are forgiven. You are forgiven. You are forgiven. Yes. You were born before technology, I understand. DM, you are also noted.
Yes, Honorable Chair, can I then come in?
Yes, yes, please.
Yeah, Honorable Chair, I just want to make a comment given what is being discussed from a planner's perspective. Just few issues, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, maybe I should say that we should not look at the reserve situation independent of the total situation of the South African National Defence Force. The reserve through the one force concept are an essential part of the South African National Defence Force for different but complementary purposes that I think General Nioba has articulated. What I would like to bring to the attention of the portfolio committee is that we should note that for a considerable number of times and over considerable situations in terms of projects and planning processes that have been undertaken by the National Defence Force. The conclusions that have been arrived at by the South African National Defence Force and the DoD are around the SANDF entirely, including the reserves. Maybe you should note, Honorable Chair, is two things. 2022-2023, given everything that you know that I do not have to repeat, is that the South African National Defence Force is imploding. The projections by the planning community of the National Defence Force is that by 2025-26, that the National Defence Force will be culminating. And these are two terms that are actually building one to each other, and they are not telling us a good picture. Implosion means essentially that if you're talking about the regular force, we are making use of our capabilities in a way. In the army, we used to call them pizza capabilities or pizza battalions, where to make a battalion, you'll have to take from 4 or 5 battalions to make one battalion so that you are able to deploy. I'm talking about regular forces. And that situation has been with us for quite a number of years, 10 to 12 years around about, to a point where that situation became untenable, that we had to implore and lean on the utilization of the reserves to make up for these so-called pizza battalions. So the business case of the reserves is actually made possible and necessary by the situations of the regulars. And the situation of the regulars is made possible because of the funding situation of the National Defence Force. And that particular picture has been discussed for quite a number of years with decision makers, particularly those that are holding the purse and distributing the fiscal resources of the country. Unfortunately, the voice of the military practitioners who have a deep understanding of the situation in terms of the National Defence Force is not that loud and heard. Instead, I may venture to say that financial accountants make the decisions, even in this particular case. And we have got what is happening continuing because of such a situation. I want to make an example, Honorable Chair. The Defense Review 2015 has made a conclusion. And that conclusion is one that we need more boots on the ground, given the mandate that be it constitutional, legislative, and policy mandate that the SANDF has and is enjoined by these regulatory documents to execute. Secondly, the chief of the SANDF planning process currently, which started last year, has got the same conclusion that we need more boots on the ground, be it in the borderline, be it in internal operations, be it in peace support operations. We need more boots on the ground. We need more capabilities. We need more cyber capabilities. We need more ICT capabilities to enhance the little boots on the ground that we have. Contrary, or to the contrary, the current National Treasury Directive that we have, it says downward manage the human resources baseline. And those things are going the opposite direction, Honorable Chair. So that the Portfolio Committee must take note of that the National Defence Force is faced with that situation where it articulates and it has undergone appreciation processes to appreciate its position and communicate it, articulate it to stakeholders that take the final decision. But it does not have the necessary voice. And I think through the Portfolio Committee, we probably have that voice. We need to articulate this. I'm going to make another example. I'm winding down, Honorable Chair. The current MSDS intakes that we have only serve to break even with natural attrition. In other words, the soldiers that we lose, we are only able to replace them. And yet we have got another situation where the soldiers that we have, some of them we cannot be able to deploy in international deployments or international assignments and even internal, given the policy framework that we have. So what it means, we continue to have less deployable forces or capabilities in the National Defence Force. And ordinarily or naturally, the solution then we have is that we must employ more reserves. And yet in the reserves environment, we have got a situation that has been persistent over time. From about 2017, 2018, we have not been able to come up with a new reserve service system. Initially, we had an MSDS intake. From that MSDS intake, we fed regulars and reserves. And from 2018 roundabout, we stopped feeding the reserves. What it means, the reserves are imploding faster than the regulars. But obviously they are still available and therefore we use them. And yet the business case for the utilization of reserves is actually more than the regulars. We have been in planning processes where we've been saying, look, we need a continuous injection of human resources in terms of the reserves, if we are to continue utilizing reserves at the pace at which we are utilizing them. But the fact of the matter is that we do not have the financial muscle to have an independent intake of the reserves. We just do not have. We only have for the regulars. And for the regulars, it does not resolve our requirements for deployable capabilities. I think it is important for the portfolio committee, and I've heard, and I think I like the tone in which we are discussing in this particular portfolio committee meeting. The portfolio committee should be able to engage with all the decision makers that can make a difference. There are other planning processes of the chief of the SANDF, for instance, which are still coming to the portfolio committee and other stakeholders, even the cabinet, where the National Defense Force will be coming and say, here's our solution. Here's our solution, for instance, in terms of internal deployments. Here's our solution in terms of our ability to react to situations, even situations of emergency, nationally and internationally, or regionally at least. Here is a solution to seal the borderline. And all those things have got implications in terms of resources. What I'm trying to say, Honorable Chair, these planning processes can be engaged upon and come with certain solutions, but these solutions will not be fiscally neutral, will not be budget neutral, will not be resource neutral. And they need to be taken across from decision makers that can make a difference in the situation of the National Defense Force resources. I submit.
Yeah, thank you for your submission, General Kundu. Okay, yeah, DM, you were noted.
Chair, thank you very much, and to committee members again, thank you very much. I'm going to try and be very quick. I've been out of the meeting for prolonged periods because of connectivity challenges, as you are aware, Chair. So some of the things that I may comment upon may not have the benefit of what was shared in the meeting already. But I wanted to start by saying, committee members, in discussing the report on the state of morale in our defense establishment, we must not shoot the messenger. And the messenger also must be helpful to make the audience aware that it's only a messenger. He has in his forte no responsibility to address the problems that the message says we have. The Inspector General is only an instrument to tell us what is happening, what the problems are. The people who are dealing with those problems and who can understand the solutions better are the generals, the military command council. And this state of morale of the Defense Force has to be discussed with that leadership. To discuss it with an inspectorate, we are not going to go far. And just in relation to the issues that I believe we should flag in our discussion as matters, Honorable Chair, we must advise on, and we are advising the Inspector General of the DOT, is that they are the procedure they have followed, the instrument they've utilized to come to this conclusion, for me, is scientific. It is convincing how they have arrived at their conclusions. But there are gaps next time they present that they must close. They are providing us with, for starters, how they constituted the sample that gave them this outcome. But in that sample, I observed that there are issues which they must be tempered with other considerations to make the information that was drawn from this sample to be more accurate. The second point is that the procedure, their inquiry involved questionnaires. They've sent out questionnaires, over 8,000 questionnaires. And of the questionnaires that they sent out, a quarter of them did not come back. Of of what was returned, about 400 of it was spoiled. You see, for me already says something about the strength, or if you like, the not so strong manner in which this inquiry was conducted. But of course, the third point is that we do not have, and this is what next time when the Inspector General comes with a report that gives us an update should do. We don't have the questionnaire that was used, that was sent out to these members who gave opinions about issues in their lives. That questionnaire is not there. Now, in the absence of the questionnaire, the only thing we can do is to look at the scores. What is this research scoring? What is it scoring? And when you look at the 20 issues that the inquiry is scoring, the greater part of these issues, they are matters which you are not going to easily get from the lower echelons of this organization. Because when you look at, for instance, what it says there, factor 1, factor 2, one is leadership of the top management of the department, leadership at the top level of the service and divisions, leadership of commanding officers. It's neutral. I am not sure if we expect very, candid responses of soldiers in relation to them judging the performance of their seniors to the extent that we can say the outcome of that inquiry is objective. And look at where the positive scores come in. Management and leadership of the officer commanding, management and leadership of the immediate supervisors. Of course, the person who is my immediate commander, if I'm in a section, if I'm in a platoon, if I'm in a company, the person who's my immediate commander, I will not say he's a bad person because they made consequences. So what I'm saying is the objectivity of this research needs to be tempered with other considerations that would make it give us a more accurate picture. The last point in relation to this is that you see the inquiry
looks at issues like policies. And in relation to policy, for instance, it says neutral. But members of the committee says, we have visited the deployments of the troops outside the country. We have picked up things that are actually agitating the troops out there, practices which we believe are improper, that people must pay for their travel back home when they are on leave. But here, policy says it's neutral. They are reserves, members of the reserves, who we now understand that they do not get medical services. They pay for their own medical services. Policy there, it says the response that they got is neutral. There's no negativity there. I am just saying we've got to look at the instrument that was used to conduct this inquiry to see areas where it may be weak and not giving us an accurate picture. Enough about that. Let me move on and say, I agree with Honorable Murray to say the overall score of neutral for the entire defense community, 3.2, is concerning because of the mission of the organization. This is a defense force. These are people who must, in the process of executing duties, possibly end up sacrificing their lives. You can't deal with, you cannot allow for a neutral state of morale. You've got to have a community that is motivated and that is prepared to live the values of the establishment of the organization. Neutral, for me, it must be treated as concerning. And over and above that, the negative around logistics and the quality of equipment, which we now know they are not happy about, we've got to address those issues. They cannot, logistics, if you want to have a problem on your hands, have a military organization that has challenges of logistics and challenges of the armament that you have put in their hands. I mean, that is just a very basic and straightforward matter. So we cannot countenance that kind of situation. Moving on, last but one point is this, that the presentation on the sourcing and contracting of our human resource, we've got to admit that there has to be discussed and discussed thoroughly. Part of it, of course, speaks to our reserve force system in relation to rejuvenating that component of our defense force. And the reserve force in number 2, that Brigadier General Mana said will take place before June, is a very important managerial exercise that we must have as part of providing solutions to some of the issues that we are talking about. Because I believe we need a deep dive to address the problem of the human resourcing and contracting of members of the South African Defence Force from cradle to grave. We need a very serious deep dive. We can't continue with the legacy issues that are defining the environment around our human resource policy. We need to really reform it for it to be in line with the concept of a professional defense force, such as the one that we have today, and not a defense force that is based on national conscription. That has to be comprehensively dealt with. The last point is that in relation to the very same question about how we contract and how we resource our defense force personnel-wise, this university reserve training program it strikes me as odd that we have had about 314 cadets drawn from universities into this program from 2011 and 2016, but you have only a fraction of those people commissioned, if I've read the information correctly. It doesn't make sense at all to me that you can spend resources to take people through such high-level training and capacitation, and the next thing you don't give them contracts to be permanent in your organization. So what I'm saying is that the area of human resource, not only in relation to the reserve, but even in relation to the entire permanent force, needs to be revisited, and we need to come up with more durable and sustainable solutions to them. What I can say is positive is that the SANDF, according to the Chief Human Resource, says its training system is aligned to the NQF system of the country. That is a very positive development that the management has put in place. It is very helpful. But with all that said, Chair, I want to say that we must agree as the Joint Standing Committee on Defense that the issues of the reserves, we must come back to them, to the Joint Standing Committee on Defense, after we have had that indab of the reserves that will take place before June. I submit, Chair, and honorable members, and the comments made from committee members, they have been registered from our side. Thank you very much.
All right, no, thank you very much, TM. I want to take it that these comments that seeks to give way forward to the engagements that we had. So I would not invite Admiral Bubu to come back. It's safe to say DM, as an executive authority, as and when we endeavor to resolve some of these challenges that we are well aware of, let's intensify our engagement with sisters departments. Most importantly, our engagement with the Commander-in-Chief to intervene, share light with the Commander-in-Chief. And I'm quite confident that we've got a progressive Minister of Finance who, for some reason, I'm just confident that if we engage him on these matters, that we foresee them as areas that are problematic and might end up being a serious challenge if not addressed immediately as a result of lack of resources availed to turn the situation around and build up a case to ensure that something is being done to salvage the capabilities that we still have. And as a joint standing committee, as well as the portfolio committee, we are trying our best, and we will continue to intensify the struggle to resolve challenges that the Defence Force is faced with. So with those words, I want to conclude the debates on the two items that were presented to us on that note, and indicate that we still have a lot of work to do. We take into consideration the economic situation that we find ourselves in, but there's nothing that stops us from intensifying our engagement up until some of these issues are resolved. So let's continue with the work that we are mandated to do. And I know it impacts on the morale of the soldiers, even though it does not, we are not quite certain what the questionnaire in terms of the survey entails. But that is some of, in almost all engagements, we will have these issues will surface because they are thorny issues within the terrain that we are in. So yeah, it's safe to say we are aware of the issues. We'll continue to intensify our effort in attempting to resolve some of these issues that can be resolved in the medium term. So thank you very much, DM. Thank you very much, Admiral Kubu, with your team. Thank you very much, the Reserve Force, Brigadier General Niabo, and the team. The first presenter from the IG, thank you very much, sir. You are then allowed to withdraw from the meeting. We'll be dealing with our internal affairs from now on, which will be looking at the minutes of the Joint Standing Committee.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much to honorable committee members, and long live the chair.
Thank you, dear.
Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Yeah, thank you, General Kundu. We can look at the first set of minutes. If I heard the chair correctly, and I think it's correct because last week we did not process the sets of minutes that we're supposed to process. I think, colleagues, we cannot bank them any further. We need to look at them and adopt them. This is the set of minutes for the meeting that was held on the 24th of November last year. That is the attendance. Next page. Those were the official attendees and the support staff. We can go to the next page. Apologies and the briefings. Second page, we'll move into the third page. If there's anything, honorable members, you will just shout as we are proceeding. The engagements there on page 4. Let's move to page 5. Nothing on page 5. Let's move to page 6. I think it's the last page. Those are the minutes, honorable members. Any mover?
I so propose.
Honorable Marais propose for the adoption. Any seconder? Any seconder? Hey, are we left only the two of us, myself and Honorable Marais?
It looked like it.
The rest are sleepy.
Yeah. Yeah, their phones are on, but they are in bed.
Yeah, this is too bad. This is too bad.
I was not part of that meeting, Chair, so I can't second.
Yeah.
Any second? Let's hear Honorable Mafanya, Honorable Mutabo.
Chairperson, if we don't get a second, obviously, then we must, then it must be moved on to the next meeting to get this one approved.
No, I'm seconding. I'm not sure if it's illegal for the chair to second. I'm seconding. We can't.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with the minutes.
Yeah. There's absolutely nothing wrong. I'm seconding the minutes are duly adopted. Do you have any other set?
Yes, Chair, we have 4 left.
There is.
Okay, let's look at the next set of the 2nd of December. That was the attendance. You can move to the next. The next page. This was apologies for the meeting presentations on the 3rd page. The 4th page, committee observations. And resolution was the last page.
I propose for acceptance.
Honorable Marais proposes. Any seconder?
It's again me and you, Chair.
Yeah, it's a problem.
No, I would have seconded. I was not present, Chief.
Oh, at least you are awake. Thank you.
No, I wasn't asleep.
Good morning. Good morning.
These things of yours of load shedding. Thank you.
Mr. Mufanya is a very honest guy. Eh?
Yeah,
definitely.
No, I will second the minutes. Let's move to the next set.
Chairperson, I don't think we are a quorum anymore.
Yeah, but when we started the meeting, we had a quorum. We don't check a quorum at the end.
Yeah, we had a quorum about a minute or two ago.
Yeah, I think when we released and some of our members decided to sneak out.
Yeah. For their super.
Yeah, this is the set of minutes for the meeting of the 7th. There is the attendance. Yeah, next page. This was the consideration and adoption of the report. We can move to the next page. Yeah, this was a short meeting. Any mover?
Mafanya moves.
Honorable Mafanya moves.
I will second.
Second, Honorable Marais second. The minutes are adopted. Can move to the next set. Okay, it's the second last, ne?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's run through. These are the minutes of the 23rd February. Yes, let's look at the attendance. Can go to the next page. Most welcoming and apologies, consideration of minutes. Third, briefings. Yeah, next page. Consideration of the letter, committee resolution. And yeah, this is the last page. Any mover?
I so move.
Second, Honorable Mafanya moves for the adoption. The second.
I will second.
Honorable Marais second. The minutes are adopted. Let's go to the last set. Yeah, it has been a long day. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
And you'll hear.
There's a word that we used in the army when I was in the army, and that's what we now do is fuzzbait.
Yeah, hey.
Until the end.
Yeah, and people will be saying, "Hey, no, these people, they don't work, they sleep."
Absolutely.
They don't know how much work we put behind the scene.
I tell you.
Yeah, this is the last set of minute dated 2nd March 2023. Those were the briefing received, the attendance, official attendance. Next page. Apologies, consideration of previous meeting reports. Next page. And those were engagements, responses from AMSCO. So briefing by the reserve force and their responses, engagements again. committee resolutions, and the meeting was adjourned around 10. So today we are doing much better with time. Any mover?
Well, not much, eh? Only about 5 minutes. Only about 5 minutes. I move.
Yeah, Honorable Marais move. Any second?
Mafanya seconds. Seconds, Mafanya.
Yeah, thank you very much. The minutes are seconded by Honorable Mafanya and duly adopted. Thank you very much, honorable members, for your attendance, patience, and your effort to ensure that we conclude the business of the Joint Standing Committee.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's very late in the evening. I don't want to keep you further than this.
Thank you, sir.
Have a lovely evening.
Thank
Good
you.
night, all of
Have
you.
a nice weekend.
Thank you,
Everybody. Thank you.
Fast bait, Marais, fast bait.
Yeah, thank you very much. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.